American 11, are you trying to call?
The cockpit is not answering their phone. Our number 1 has been staffed, and our 5 has been staffed.
I am going to call from Washington. I am in a situation with American 11, a possible hijack.
What's going on, Betty? The aircraft is erratic again. Problem, very erratic.
Oh, mon Dieu!
Betty, talk to me.
It's 8:52 here in New York. I'm Bryant Gumbel. We understand that there has been a plane crash on the southern tip of Manhattan. You're looking at the World Trade Center. We understand that a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center. We don't know anything more than that. We don't know if it was a commercial aircraft. We don't know if it was a private aircraft. We have no idea how many were on board or what the extent of the injuries are right now.
A few moments ago, something believed to be a plane crashed into the south tower of the World Trade Center. I just saw flames inside. You can see the smoke coming out of the tower.
I'd say the whole takes about, looks like 6, 7 floors were taken out. And there's more explosions right now. Hold on, people are running.
Wait, hold on just a moment. We've got an explosion inside.
The building's exploding right now. You got people running up the street.
2 planes have crashed into the World Trade Center in New York.
There have been a series of terrorist attacks in the United States.
Pictures just in showed the building already on fire with smoke billowing from the upper floors. We have no details on why the planes hit the building, nor so far of any deaths or injuries.
All airports in New York.
New York, a passenger jet which had taken off from Boston slammed into the World Trade Center.
Of the 110-story block of offices that was the World Trade Center.
Obviously, it's a very busy building with hundreds, possibly even thousands of people working there. We can only imagine that all of the hospitals and all of the emergency services will be stretched to the limit.
The second tower is collapsing. This smoke is now all that is left of the extraordinary and fine and gorgeous, beautiful, sumptuous buildings that were the World Trade Center.
Good evening. Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts. Thousands of lives were suddenly ended by evil, despicable acts of terror. The pictures of airplanes flying into buildings, fires burning, huge structures collapsing, have filled us with disbelief, terrible sadness, and a quiet, unyielding anger. I've directed the full resources of our intelligence and law enforcement communities to find those responsible and to bring them to justice. We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbor them.
While this moving speech from President Bush brought the country together, it also tore us apart. When Osama bin Laden and ISIS was found to be the culprit behind orchestrating the 9/11 attacks, American sadness turned to anger, and all blame was put towards the Muslims. Anti-Muslim hate crimes had increased as Bush's war on terror was announced. Our country saw Muslims in their communities as national threats and led to hurtful, unwarranted actions upon them due to prejudice, verbally or physically. In 2001, following the attacks, the FBI reported that the number of anti-Muslim victimless hate crimes rose from 28 in 2000 to 481 in 2001, which was a 17-fold increase.
Salman Azam grew up in Staten Island in New York City. He says 9/11 was a defining moment in his life.
He went to funerals for friends' parents who worked in the World Trade Center or who were firefighters or police officers. So it was a very emotional time.
Not only as an American, but also as a Muslim.
I walked outside the mosque one day and I remember a truck driving by telling me, like, go back to where you came from. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I was born in Brooklyn. You know, I'm just as American as any one of you.
Our country was under attack again, but this time it was our society against one another. Organized crime was reported throughout the U.S. at mosques, a Muslim place of worship, and random racial-based attacks were seen in neighborhoods and street corners.
One of the ugliest legacies of this crisis is homegrown.
We've seen both the best of America, and now because of hate, begin to see some of the worst.
At home during those years, a different war was brewing.
Is America becoming Islamophobic, a prejudice against Muslims?
In fear and frustration, Americans were turning on each other.
A growing number of Americans saying, forget political correctness.
I'll tell you what you do. You racially profile.
I am not going to stop until I have executed at least 10 Muslims.
Would like to make it very clear that we are Americans too.
It's not about religion. It's about stopping Tennessee homegrown terrorists.
We were receiving phone calls from loved ones who were saying, our brother has been shot, our Gurdwara has been vandalized, someone's going to die, someone's going to die.
The man who plowed his pickup truck into a Tallahassee mosque said he did it because he hated Muslims.
It was very easy to see after 9/11 that the result was a more truculent, antagonistic version of the United States.
The number of hate crimes is growing by the day.
We to date have initiated 40 hate crime investigations, 120 investigations, 316 hate crime investigations. In excess of 400 investigations, 532 hate crime investigations where the victims were either Arab, Muslim, or Sikh.
In Ohio today, another mosque vandalized. Saturday, a Pakistani Muslim shot dead in Dallas. And in Arizona, a gas station owner shot and killed.
My house was attacked. My car was attacked. People began throwing pig's blood, pig's head, on all kinds of things against the Islamic Center. So it was pandemonium.
Balbir Singh Sodhi was the first person of dozens of people killed in hate violence in the aftermath of 9/11. And yet his story and the stories of so many of our community members barely made the evening news. He was shot 5 times in the back. His murderer yelled that he was a patriot when he was arrested.
It didn't take long for President Bush to speak up and call for Americans to unite, regardless of skin color, ethnicity, and religion.
Good evening. We thank the many Muslim nations who stand with us against terror. Nations that are often victims of terror themselves. Tonight's iftar also sends a message to all Americans. Our nation is waging a war on a radical network of terrorists, not on a religion, and not on a civilization. As we wage this war to defend our principles, we must live up to those principles ourselves. And one of the deepest commitments of America is tolerance. No one should be treated unkindly because of the color of their skin or the content of their creed. No one should be unfairly judged by appearance or ethnic background or religious faith.
According to the United States National Archives, Bush in the Oval Office has also gone on record to state,
Muslims who proudly call themselves Americans, and they know what I know, that the Muslim faith is based upon peace and love and compassion. The exact opposite of the teachings of the Al-Qaeda organization, which is based upon evil and hate and destruction.
when we remember what we have learned from 9/11, we remember our country's strength during that time and how we came together to fight against the hateful attacks on America's soil. We often never remember the American Muslim citizens who were fighting their own war, as they were being perceived as terrorists in their own country. Though it is 2023 and 20 plus years after the attacks occurred, Muslims still face Islamophobia today.
An ABC News review of FBI hate crime data from the past 2 decades found that the number of anti-Muslim incidents spiked nationwide following September 11th and they have never returned to pre-2001 levels.
Average, ordinary, everyday Muslim is no different than any other citizen, someone who is working to put food on the table for their children, contributing to our country.
Rahab says Muslims are often unfairly held responsible for the actions of a few.
When it comes to Muslims, there was still that understanding that somehow all of us, individual, ordinary Muslims, are an extension of that aberrational, bizarre behavior that none of us can relate to or even understand. That is a double standard, and I think we're beginning to understand that that double standard exists.
Azam says many Muslim Americans lost their lives on 9/11, and many helped in the city's recovery, including his dad.
One of the things I'm most proud of is that my father, who was also an engineer who worked for the city of New York, was part of the rebuilding of the subway stations under the World Trade Center.
Islamic religion and the teachings of the Quran, the Muslim version of the Bible, are often misunderstood by Americans. It is rumored to be filled with strict rules and hate, but on the contrary, it teaches love and peace.
Now, if we look to the Quran, we'll find that 3%, you just take all the verses in the Quran that are of a legal nature, and then count all the verses of the Quran, take the quotient, and you'll find out that about 3% of them are commands and prohibitions, divine commands and prohibitions. 97% of the Quran teaches ethics, the relationship between God and man, the purpose of life, teaches many, many major themes.
It is crucial to remember today in society that Muslim Americans shared none of the same beliefs as the radicalists who attacked our country. Their hearts are filled with love and admiration for this country, not hate. We must work to change the hurtful narrative that has been pinned on Muslims and break the repeating cycle of Islamophobia seen in words and actions following 9/11.